let us start with our first topic, cost sheet. Now, cost sheet is a sheet on which you show cost. In simple terms, it is a sheet on which one by one you show all the cost. Fine. Cost sheet basically is concerned with unit costing. It's associated with unit costing. Now, what exactly do you mean by unit costing? When three conditions are fulfilled, a manufacturer making homogeneous products from one single process. Costing is divided into many fields, many categories: unitary costing, process costing, contract costing, operating costing, job costing, batch costing. Now these are the various fields in costing. Now it depends upon what business is being done that the category in which you fall is understood. Cost sheet is basically unit costing. Cost sheet is followed by those people who fall under the category of unit costing. Unit costing is meant for manufacturers making homogeneous products from one single process. So in this chapter we are talking about a manufacturer of goods. Manufacturer means he buys raw material and converts them into finished goods. The manufacturer who produces homogeneous products, it means that if he is producing 10,000 units, all 10,000 units are identical in all respect, in color, taste, size, weight. In all respects they are same. Is that fine? It means अगर वो साड़ी बना रहा है 10,000 sarees, तो all 10,000 sarees should look alike. ऐसा नहीं होना मांगता है ये साड़ी इस साड़ी से सफेद कैसे. Homogeneous means same in all respects. So we are now talking about manufacturers who are making homogeneous products from one single process. One single process. It means there's a single process. You introduce raw material, do some processing work, and you will get the output, finished goods. 2-3 processes are not involved. One single process. That's it. Such people come under unit costing, and how they find out their cost we will study in this chapter. Unit costing deals with manufacturers who are making homogeneous products from one single process, and how these people, these manufacturers, find the cost of their product. That we are going to study in this chapter named cost sheet. Now these type of manufacturers prepare a sheet of paper on which one by one they list down all the costs. One after the other they list down their cost, and that sheet of paper will be called as cost sheet. However, the order is to be decided, is already pre-decided. The order of writing the expenses is pre-decided. In simple terms, for so many years now you have been studying financial accounting. The accounts that you have been studying till now is financial accounting, and the basic objective of financial accounting is to know the result of the business, that is profit or loss, and to know the financial position of the business, assets and liabilities. The basic objective of financial bookkeeping. Is that so? In costing, the basic assumption is to find out the cost, estimate cost, analyze cost, cost reduction, cost control. These are the basic objectives. So from objective point of view itself, they are different. Now suppose I talk about my financial accounting. इतने सालों से आप प्रॉफिट ढूंढने के लिए क्या करते थे? We used to prepare two accounts, trading account and profit and loss account, to find out the profit. क्या जरूरत है? Why is it needed to make these two accounts? To find out the profit. Income minus expenses profit. Such a simple equation. List down all the incomes, add them, and from the income total deduct all the expenses. You will get profit. Yes or no? But still there was one systematic way developed to find out the profit. Make trading account and make profit and loss account. Again, some expenses and incomes were to be written in trading account, some to profit and loss account. So getting the profit was made in a systematic manner through these two accounts. Same way, in this chapter, we have to find out the cost. If you just want to find out the cost, just add up all the costs, finish, that's all. But here also, you have to do it very systematically. First you have to take some type of cost, then to gradually go on adding the other cost in a specific order, and then you will get the total cost. There is some order given of the way in which the costs are to be added one after the other. This is the basic about cost sheet. So we are not talking about what unit costing deals with, what manufacturers making homogeneous products from one single process. Correct? Then in order to find out the cost, of the product, these, or you can say under unit costing, a cost sheet is prepared. It is a sheet of paper where all the expenses are listed and totaled in a systematic manner. Is that fine? Now please listen here. Let us now try and understand what is cost. We have already discussed this, what is cost. Now cost refers to values sacrificed consumed or exhausted in producing a thing or in doing an activity. Is it fine? Now obviously we know that now in order to prepare a cost sheet, what we have to do is we have to list down all the costs. Now before understanding the format of a cost sheet, let us try and analyze the cost. Let us try and analyze our cost. Cost. Fine. Now everyone is paying attention here. In cost sheet, we require some important things to be noted first before we know the format. All costs are divided into two parts. All costs are divided into two. The direct cost and the indirect cost. All costs are divided into two. The direct cost and the indirect cost. So I have direct and indirect. Now what do we mean by the direct cost and the indirect cost? Now direct cost are costs which are directly attributable to the product, which have directly been incurred on the product. Direct costs are those costs which are directly attributable to the product. The cost that we have incurred directly on the product. Now what exactly do I mean by this? Please understand this. Suppose we are making shirts. The cost of the cloth. Now cloth is going into the product. Yes or no? So I will call that the cost of that material is direct cost, because it is directly attributable to the product. Cost directly attributable to the product. My factory workers, I am paying them some wages for doing what? For converting raw material into finished goods. So this payment I am making, payment is being made for something which is done on the product. Yes or no? So again it is directly related to the product. So I will call it as my direct wages or my direct cost. Now if in the factory there are so many machines, right? So for smooth running of those machines, the machines are frequently being oiled. Some oiling work is done on them. Now oil is also a material, but is it a part of your final product? I said shirt के लिए cloth is a part of your product. Is oil directly attributable to the product? No, then I will call it as my indirect cost. Same way, my office assistant or my office clerk, are they contributing anything in converting raw material to finished goods? No. So their work is not directly attributable to the product. So whatever payment is made to them will be indirect. Is that fine? All costs are divided into two: the direct cost and the indirect cost. Direct costs are those costs which are directly attributable to the product, which are directly incurred on the product. I have given example of materials, which can be direct, which can be indirect. Then salaries and wages, if they are paid to factory workers for production work, so direct. If they are paid to the workers who are not involved in the production process, then it would amount to an indirect cost. Is that okay? There are other costs also, like Mr. MF Hussain has made some painting on a canvas, but he does not know obviously how to laminate it and frame it. So he must be giving it to someone else, that job, for which per frame say he must be paying 500 rupees. Per framing of his painting he may be paying say 500 rupees. Is that fine? Now tell me, is he using his own raw material for framing purpose or his own labor? No. But still the payment of 500 that is being made is for a work which is done on the product. So he would again call it as what? Direct cost. Direct cost. Suppose embroidered shirts now come in fashion. We are manufacturers of shirts, but we do not have people skilled in embroidery work. So for embroidery work, we will send these shirts to outside people, and per shirt say we will be paying them 50 rupees. They will use their own thread and needle. It's their own material, their own labor. We will pay them as a whole for their service 50 rupees per shirt. But again the work is being done on the product. I would still call it as my direct cost. Is that okay? So direct cost can be direct materials, direct wages, and other direct expenses like these. Is that okay? Where our own material or labor is not going, but still we are paying, and that work is on the product. So first of all, cost is divided into direct cost and indirect cost. डायरेक्ट कॉस्ट में डायरेक्ट मटेरियल का एग्जांपल दिया, इनडायरेक्ट मटेरियल का भी एग्जांपल दिया. फॉर अ शर्ट, क्लॉथ इज डायरेक्ट मटेरियल. फॉर फर्नीचर, वुड इज डायरेक्ट मटेरियल. Yes, but varnish is indirect material. Or oiling, grease, these are all indirect materials. I'll give you the reason. Then for payment that we are making to our human resource, our workers, if they are involved in the production process, then direct. If they are not involved in the production process, the cost would be considered as indirect. And other expenses like this special designs, special dyes, if they are, because they have been incurred on the product, they would become direct. And printing, stationery, postage, telegram, these are all other indirect costs. So basically your direct cost is further divided into three. Your direct cost is further divided into three parts: direct materials, direct wages, and direct expenses. So we have 3. Under direct cost you have 3. Direct materials, direct wages and overheads. I'm sorry, direct expenses. So we have direct materials, direct wages and direct expenses. You now know the examples of all the 3? Yes or no? Your indirect costs are also further classified into 3. Your indirect costs are also further classified into 3. Now, indirect costs are not classified as indirect materials, indirect wages and indirect expenses. They are classified on the basis of the functions. Indirect costs are also known as overheads. Indirect costs are also known as overheads, and on the basis of the purpose for which these overheads or indirect costs have been incurred, they are classified into 3: factory overheads, office and administration overheads and selling and distribution overheads. Selling and distribution overheads. So if the indirect cost is incurred for factory purpose, it is factory overheads. For office and administration work, then office and administration overheads. And for selling the goods or for their distribution to the final consumers, it would go for selling and distribution overheads. Now, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल वी हैव ऑलरेडी टेकन कि डायरेक्ट में मटेरियल्स भी होता है, वेजेस भी होता है, अदर डायरेक्ट एक्सपेंस होता है. सेम वे वी हैड आल्सो कंक्लूडेड इनडायरेक्ट में भी मटेरियल होता है, वेजेस होता है, अदर एक्सपेंसेस होता है. यस, दिस इज व्हाट वी हैव कंक्लूडेड. Now if that indirect material, indirect wages or indirect expenses are incurred in factory, then they would become factory overhead. Like oil and grease is an indirect factory material. Yes, factory's watchman's salary is an indirect factory wages. And factory lighting and all are other factory expenses which are not direct, they are indirect. Same way for office. The printing and stationery material is an office indirect material. Office staff salary is indirect salaries of office. And there are so many other expenses like postage, telegram, telephone expenses and so on. They are all indirect. And similarly for selling and distribution overheads. Sales department staff, salesman's commission, salesman's traveling, advertisement cost. These will all come under selling and distribution overheads. Indirect costs are also known as overheads. Indirect costs are also known as overheads. Is that fine? Now with this classification, we now try and understand what do you mean by a cost sheet. I told you cost sheet is a sheet of paper where we will write all the cost. Now you only tell me, first we should record which cost? Direct cost or indirect cost? So very first we will, in our cost sheet, in our statement of cost, we will first take up all the direct costs. First we will take direct materials, then direct wages, then direct expenses. Then we will get one total. This total is called direct cost. Direct cost is also known as prime cost. Direct cost is also known as prime cost. So what we do is we add up all the direct expenses. We add up all these three direct expenses, and the total we get is direct cost, also known as prime cost. So now you get something known as prime cost. Now tell me, after this, in the cost sheet, what expense should be taken out of this indirect? तीन इनडायरेक्ट है ना, बोलो अभी प्राइम कॉस्ट में सबसे पहला कौन सा ऐड होना चाहिए? फैक्ट्री. So to prime cost you add factory overheads. To your prime cost you add what? Factory overheads. And the total, this time the total that you get is called factory cost. The total that you get is called factory cost. Is called factory cost, and this factory cost is also known as works cost. This factory cost is also known as works, WORKS, works cost. Is it fine? Now to this factory cost, what you should add? Office and administration. Now we are adding all the costs. Ultimately we want, in the cost sheet we have to add all the costs, that is for sure. But in what order we should add, that is now the main criteria. So to the factory cost we now add office and administration overheads. To this factory cost we now add office and administration overheads, and the total is called cost of production. The total is called what? Cost of production. So now the total that you get is called cost of production. And now finally, to cost of production, what will you add? There's only one cost left out now. Yes? Selling and distribution. So to this cost of production you will now add selling and distribution cost, and you will get the total cost. Is that clear? So you now add selling and distribution cost, and the total you will call as your total cost, also known as cost of sales. Is that fine? So in short, in your cost sheet, when you are adding up all the costs, first you will take what cost? Direct cost or indirect cost? Direct cost. Indirect cost, your first will be direct materials, then add direct wages, then add direct expense. The total will be called प्राइम कॉस्ट का दूसरा नाम डायरेक्ट कॉस्ट. टू डायरेक्ट कॉस्ट you will first add what? Factory overheads. The total will be called factory cost. Factory cost is also called as works cost. Then to factory cost you will add what? I'm sorry, office and administration overheads, and the total you will call as your cost of production. Then you have only one thing to add, that is selling and distribution overheads. You will get the total cost, and that total cost is known as cost of sales. Once you get cost of sales, the rest is all easy. How? Because to this cost of sales you will add profit and you will get sales. Is that fine? You will add profit and you will get what? Sales. But now we are talking about what type of businessman? Let's get it back. We are talking about what type of businessman? A trader or a manufacturer? A manufacturer has three types of stocks. Stock of raw materials, work in progress, finished goods. Yes, a manufacturer has three types of stocks: stock of raw material, work in progress, and finished goods. So he will be having such stock at the beginning of the year as well as at the end of the year. Now how do we deal with these stocks? How do we deal with opening and closing stock of raw material, work in progress, and finished goods? That is our main criteria. Now tell me, what are we trying to find out in the cost sheet? When we are doing cost sheet, what are we trying to find out? We are trying to find out what? The cost of the product. हम लोग प्रोडक्ट का कॉस्ट ढूंढने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. Yes or no? Now tell me, suppose I have purchased raw materials worth rupees 10,000, but to make that product I have used only 8,000. So while finding the cost of the product, I should take as my cost 10,000 or 8,000. I have purchased 10,000 worth of raw material, but I have used or consumed only 8,000 to make the product. So while finding the cost of the product, what should I write? 8,000 or 10,000? 8,000. It means when I am talking about materials, I am talking about materials consumed. Is that okay? Materials consumed means materials used. Now how do we get this materials consumed or used? How do we calculate this materials consumed or used? Look here, direct materials consumed कैसे मिलेगा? Opening stock of materials, add raw materials purchased, add expenses relating to purchase, less closing stock of materials. This is how you will get the raw materials used. It's as simple as this. At the beginning of the year, suppose at the beginning of the year I had opening stock of 1,000. Then I purchased raw materials worth 10,000 more. तो मेरे पास कितना हो गया? 11,000, 1,000 was already in stock, 10,000 more I purchased. कितना हो गया? 11,000 हो गया. Yes or no? 11,000 हो गया. Out of that साल के end में 3,000 बच गया है. So how much is used? 8,000. To make the product we have used only 8,000. So obviously with this formula you can get that. However, this is something to be understood. Expenses relating to purchase. Expenses relating to purchase means expenses relating to buying the goods and to bring them to our premises. Expenses relating to buying the goods and bringing such goods to our premises. Relating to buying goods matlab, suppose while buying we had to pay some commission to a broker in between, and then to bring it from bring it to our premises, carriage inward, freight inward. While bringing, suppose it is imported raw material, then import duty, octroi duty, check naka pe octroi duty. Suppose it is coming from say Germany, the machinery, so we must have taken a transit insurance. रास्ते में कुछ हो ना जाए, for that we have taken out an insurance. So the premium that we have paid, these are all expenses relating to purchase and bringing the goods to our premises. These are all direct expenses that they are all relating to purchase of raw material, so we add them to the cost of raw material. Just like when we purchase machinery, then the cost of bringing that machinery to our premises and bringing it to use, erection charges and all, we add to the cost of machinery. Same way here for raw materials, we add it to the cost of raw material. What proportion? Obviously, while valuing closing stock, these expenses are also included and then closing stock is valued. Is that fine? Opening stock also must already be including the proportionate expenses relating to purchase. Is that fine? तो चलो रॉ मटेरियल का ओपनिंग क्लोजिंग स्टॉक ठिकाने लग गया. We started our discussion with that we have three types of stocks: raw material, work in progress and finished goods. Raw material has already been taken care of. Yes. Now the cost of, what about work in progress? What about work in progress? Work in progress का मतलब क्या है पहले? What do you mean by work in progress? Units in the course of production. In simple terms, units that are in the course of production. They are now no longer raw materials. You have started production with them, but the production is not yet complete, not yet finished. So they are in some intermediary stage. Yes. Like in a ready-made garment factory, suppose some cloth has been cut and kept, and it will be stitched tomorrow. So that cloth which has been cut, cutting करके रख दिया है, the stitching will be done tomorrow, but then that cloth which has been cutted is not now in the form of raw material. Some wages has already been incurred on it. Yes or no? You cannot say it is now in the form of raw material in which you brought it. It is also not finished goods. Yes, it is in some intermediary stage of production. You call it work in progress. Now how do you deal with work in progress? Tell me, जो आधा बनकर तैयार हुआ है, सेमी फिनिश गुड्स एज यू मोर पॉपुलरली कॉल इट, उसमें रॉ मटेरियल गया कि नहीं गया? यस और नो? उसको उस स्टेज तक पहुंचाने के लिए वेजेस का खर्चा हुआ है कि नहीं हुआ है? हुआ है। वो जब फैक्ट्री में बन रहा था, फैक्ट्री में लाइट बिजलियां जल रही थी कि नहीं? मशीन डेप्रिशिएट हो रहे थे कि नहीं? यानी उस पर फैक्ट्री ओवरहेड्स भी हुआ है, थोड़ा बहुत फैक्ट्री ओवरहेड्स ऑल्सो उस पर हुआ है, लेकिन इट हैज नॉट कम आउट फ्रॉम द फैक्ट्री. सो ऑफिस एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, सेलिंग, डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ओवरहेड्स, उसके ऊपर कुछ भी हुआ नहीं हुआ. सो द वैल्यू ऑफ वर्क इन प्रोग्रेस includes materials, includes wages, and includes some part of factory overheads. Yes or no? So after factory overheads is added, but before adding the office and administration and selling overheads, the opening and closing stock of work in progress should be adjusted. So work in progress should be adjusted before adding office and administration overheads. Is that clear? So what we do is we add opening work in progress here and less closing work in progress here. So now our format slightly changed. Prime cost plus factory overheads plus opening work in progress less closing work in progress will now be called as factory cost. So opening and closing work in progress are adjusted after adding the factory overheads, but before adding office and administration overheads. Is that very much clear? Why the position is here? You understood? So चलो अभी तक हमारा फॉर्मेट क्या है? इन द कॉस्ट शीट सबसे पहले क्या लिखने का? यस, डायरेक्ट कॉस्ट. डायरेक्ट कॉस्ट में सबसे पहले डायरेक्ट मटेरियल्स कंज्यूम, देन डायरेक्ट wages, then direct expenses. You will get a total. Total is called prime cost. Now to the prime cost you will add what? Factory overheads. You will call the total as nothing. To that total you will add opening work in progress, deduct closing work in progress, and now the total that you get will be called factory cost. Factory cost is also called works cost. To the factory cost you will then add office and administration overheads, and the total will be called cost of production. Is that okay? Stop. What do you mean by cost of production? It is the cost of those goods that you have produced. Cost of production मतलब cost of those goods which you have produced. तो ये जो कॉस्ट है ना, वो जो यूनिट्स प्रोड्यूस है ना, उसका कॉस्ट है. सेलिंग एक्सपेंसेस यूनिट्स बेचा उसका कॉस्ट है. यस और नो? हाउ कैन these two be compared or added or subtracted? Whatever you want to do, how can you do it directly? Cost of production relates to units produced, whereas selling expenses relate to units sold. Yes or no? So how can you add them directly? Yes or no? So first I should convert this cost of production to cost of goods sold. From cost of production units produced, I should first convert this cost of production to cost of goods sold, so that I can then directly add my selling expenses against it. Is that okay? Is that understood? So I can't add the two directly. Is that fine? So what should I do? Now listen here. From cost of production, how can I get cost of goods sold? Look here. मेरे पास साल के स्टार्टिंग में सपोज 500 यूनिट्स था. मैंने इस साल 10,000 यूनिट्स और बनाया. अब कितना हो गया? 10,500. I already had 500 units. I produced 10,000 units more. So how much units did I have? 10,500 units. From these 10,500 units, 1,500 is still left, not sold. So how much is sold? From 10,500, 1,500 is not sold. So remaining 9,000 has been sold. Yes or no? Remaining 9,000 has been sold. I know the cost of production. It means indirectly I know the cost of 10,000 units. I have produced 10,000 units ना. इसमें 500 units का cost add करना है और 1,500 units का cost less करना है. तो 9,000 units का cost मिल जाएगा. In short, I should do what? Add opening stock of finished goods. Yes or no? And less what? Closing stock of finished goods. And now what I will get is called cost of goods sold. And now to this cost of goods sold, I can now add selling and distribution cost, and the total will be called as cost of sales. Is that very much clear? Is that fine now? So all stocks included. Is this very much clear? So what? Now your final format. Final format. How will your cost sheet look like? Cost sheet for the period fine. Now tell me what will you write first in your cost sheet? सबसे पहले कौन सा cost लेना है? Direct cost. In the direct cost, the first one is direct materials consumed. Direct materials consumed अगर दिया हुआ है straight away you will write in the outer column. Otherwise, if you are given opening stock, purchases and all, you will write in the first column, and then find the consumed, and you go for the outer column. Outer column is the middle column. Is it fine? The last column is the cost per unit column. We will talk about it later. So direct cost सबसे पहले direct materials, then direct wages, then you will have what? Direct expenses. The total is called prime cost. Prime cost का दूसरा नाम direct cost. So you get a total. Is that fine? To the indirect cost we now add, to the direct cost we now add indirect cost. The first indirect cost is factory overheads. Is that fine? After adding factory overheads, you will get a total. I have kept it in inner column for some purpose. From this total, I add opening stock of work in progress and less closing stock of work in progress, and now the total that you get is called what? Tell me. Factory cost or works cost. Now what expense you should add? You recollect the diagram, the chart. अभी इसके बाद क्या ऐड होएगा? Office and administration overheads, and to the total is called now what? Cost of production. To cost of production we add, look here in our diagram, cost of production में क्या ऐड करते हैं? Opening stock of finished goods and less closing stock of finished goods. We will get what? Cost of goods sold. So here you add opening stock of finished goods less closing stock of finished goods and you will get what? Cost of goods sold. And now there is only one thing to be added: selling and distribution overheads, and you will get what? Cost of sales. And to cost of sales you will add profit, you will get sales. Is it fine? Now why here? Now you can see here in the entire cost sheet we have taken only one income, that at the end, sales. This sales is of what? Goods, finished goods, correct? Apart from that there is one more income that we take in cost sheet, and that is sale of scrap. Sale of scrap is said to be a reduction in the cost. Scrap बेच के जो मिला, that will reduce our cost, and since scrap is coming from the factory, we deducted from the factory overheads sale of scrap. and the net factory cost, factory overheads, is then added. Is that fine? Is the format clear? Pakka? Is the format over? Very much clear? Any doubts? Why opening stock and closing stock are adjusted before factory cost? It's not actually that we are adjusting before factory cost. We want to adjust it after factory overheads but before office and administration overheads. Reason, those units which are in process, work in progress, some material has gone into it, some wages have gone into it, some direct expense must have been incurred on it, and some factory overheads has also been incurred on them. Yes, because they are being made in the factory, but they have not been exposed to office or selling activities, so these are not included in their value. Cost up to here is included in their value. Yes or no? And office administration उसकी value में है ही नहीं. So before office administration overheads and after factory overheads, I want to adjust my work in progress. Is that fine? Very much clear? So let us have a clear picture about it. सबसे पहले all the costs are divided into two, direct cost and indirect cost. Direct costs are those costs which are directly attributable to the product which have been incurred on the product. Is that okay? Indirect costs are all costs which are not direct cost. All costs which are not direct cost are indirect cost. Direct costs are divided into three: direct materials, direct wages and direct expenses. Direct materials means those materials which have gone into the product. Direct wages, those wages paid to those workers which are involved in the process of production, and other direct expenses are those other expenses which have been incurred directly on the product. Indirect overheads are classified into direct factory overheads, office administration overheads, selling and distribution overheads. It is to be recollected now that indirect cost is also known as overheads, correct? Indirect cost is also known as overheads. There is one more name to indirect cost known as on cost. Indirect costs are also called on cost. So when I say office on cost, what do I mean? Office overheads. So I mean factory cost and factory on cost are different. Factory on cost means factory overheads. On cost is the second name for what? Overheads. So factory on cost means factory overheads. But factory cost means prime cost plus factory overheads. It's different. Is that clear? Direct wages के दूसरे नाम. Direct wages are also known as manufacturing wages. Manufacturing activity. Productive wages. Or simply wages. Sometimes they are just called wages. That's it. Factory, you can replace the word factory with works. So just like factory cost is called works cost, factory overheads is also called works overheads. Is that fine? Are all these things clear? Let's go for the format. The very first heading in the format will be what? डायरेक्ट कॉस्ट में सबसे पहले डायरेक्ट मटेरियल्स कंज्यूम, सेकेंड डायरेक्ट वेजेस, थर्ड direct expenses. Total, this total will be called prime cost. To the prime cost you add factory overheads, you will get nothing. To this total you add opening stock of work in progress less closing stock of work in progress. Now the net total is called factory cost or works cost. To factory cost you will add office and administration overheads, you will get cost of production. Add opening stock of finished goods less closing stock of finished goods, you get cost of goods sold. And to cost of goods sold you add selling and distribution overheads, you will get cost of sales, which is also called as the total cost. To that you add profit, you will get sales. Is that very much clear? Very clear. Now I told you just a few moments back that in the cost sheet we take only two incomes. One is sales, this is sales of goods, and the other is sale of scrap. It means commission received, discount received, dividend received, brokerage received. Yes, these are never ever part of the cost sheet. These are never ever the part of the cost sheet. Is that fine? So as far as incomes are concerned, I can say in cost sheet we take only two incomes. One is sales and other is sale of scrap. As far as expenses are concerned, please listen carefully. We take all expenses except expenses of non-operating nature and finance expenses. Two expenses we do not take. What are they? Non-operating expenses and expenses of financial nature. In cost sheet we don't take financial expenses like interest paid, whether it is on loan or bank overdraft or debentures. No, interest paid is not taken, it's a financial expense. We also don't take non-operating expenses. Non-operating expenses are those expenses which are not normal day-to-day business expenses. नॉर्मल डे टू डे बिजनेस कंडक्ट करने का एक्सपेंस नहीं है तो नहीं लेने का. Like what? Preliminary expenses written off. Preliminary expenses you have incurred at the time of formation of the company and you have treated it like deferred revenue expenditure, and every year some part of it you are writing off in the profit and loss account. Is that your main day-to-day business expense? Preliminary expense? No. So preliminary expenses written off will not come. Is that okay? Goodwill written off. Loss on sale of asset. These are not normal business expenses. They are all not normal day-to-day business expenses. So goodwill written off, preliminary expenses written off, discount on issue of shares or debentures written off, donations, charities, they are not normal day-to-day business expenses. Penalties and fines, loss on sale of assets. Is that okay? So these expenses will never form part of the cost sheet. Is that fine? One query, one question, and that question is, while preparing trading and profit and loss account and finding profit, we are talking now about which type of accounts? Cost accounting or financial accounting? So financial accounting. इन फाइनेंशियल अकाउंटिंग ये सब चीज प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस में लेते थे कि नहीं लेते थे? डोनेशन, पेनल्टीज, चैरिटीज, यही नहीं, इनकम्स भी लेते थे, डिस्काउंट रिसीव्ड, ब्रोकरेज रिसीव्ड, कमीशन रिसीव्ड, यस और नो? यस और नो? तो फिर वहां पर प्रॉफिट अलग दिखेगा, कॉस्ट शीट में अलग दिखेगा, बिकॉज सम एक्सपेंसेस एंड इनकम्स which have been taken in financial books have not been taken in costing books. Yes or no? So profit shown by financial books and costing books will not be the same, and so at the end of the year a reconciliation statement is prepared to reconcile the profit as per costing books and financial books. Is that fine? So after the format of the cost sheet is clear, we have now noted down 2 points. In case of incomes, only 2 are taken, rest are not taken. In case of expenses, all are taken except 2 categories. One, non-operating expenses of the business, and the other is financial expenses. 2 are not taken. Third, sometimes, now listen this is an important analysis. Sometimes in cost sheet expenses नहीं हुआ फिर भी लेते हैं on notional basis. Expenses which have not actually been incurred are also taken on notional basis. Now the cost sheet is normally used for analysis purpose, for comparing our cost structure with the cost structure of the others in the same industry. For future estimation also cost sheet is used. Next year what will be the cost and so on. So sometimes what happens, now suppose we are talking about coal mines, we are talking about say coal mines. Majority of the people doing business of extraction of coal do not own that land. Why do they buy the land? They don't have any use of the land. They have use of something which is below the land. So majority of the people don't buy the land, they take the land on lease, extract the minerals or coal, then leave the land and go away, and they pay lease rentals. भाड़ा देना पड़ता है, लीज पे लिया तो you have to pay rent. So majority those in this industry do not have their own land, they have taken it on lease. But suppose there is one company who is having its own land, तो बाकी सबके कॉस्ट शीट में रेंट दिखेगा, उसके कॉस्ट शीट में रेंट नहीं दिखेगा. So to make his cost sheet comparable with the others in the industry, on notional basis rent will also be shown in the cost sheet. You have not actually incurred that rent expense, but even then अगर ये किसी और को हम लीज पे देते तो हमको कितना रेंट मिलता, और नोशनल बेसिस पे दैट रेंट इज टेकन इन द कॉस्ट शीट. Is that fine? Similarly, this is just one example, notional rent. Some other notional expenses, like suppose in in the hotel industry, the restaurant industry, normally one person has 3-4 hotels, restaurants situated at different places, and each one is managed by a manager. So this is very common in the industry. The hotel is being run by a manager who is paid a very ransom amount, very good amount, big amount. But then we have 4 hotels, but we have not given it to anyone. We are only looking after it. the partners themselves are looking after. They have not given it on to manage to someone else. So majority of the people in this industry have managers remuneration in their cost sheet. We don't have it. So our own labor's cost on notional basis we will include in the cost sheet. So this is one very important thing. In financial books, you'd never find a place of a cost which you have not incurred. You record only on accrual basis, only when the cost is incurred or accrued. But in cost sheets, sometimes expenses are also taken on notional basis. So till now we have noted three important things about costing. One, in case of incomes, only two incomes are taken. Two, in case of expenses, two types of expense not taken. And three, sometimes some expenses, even though not incurred, are taken on notional basis. Is this very, very clear? Very much clear. Fine. Something more. Is this over? Everything understood as of now about cost sheet? Any queries? You have to show the notional expenses in the cost sheet at appropriate place, like manager's remuneration, your own labor. You are managing is an administration activity, so you will then show it in office and administration overheads. Rent, like I gave you my example, the rent is of what? Of the land. Land is as good as your factory site. In the coal extraction field, it's as good as a factory site, so it's as good as factory rent. So in that case, you will show that rent in factory overhead. So at appropriate place, you will have to show that notional expense. There is no specific separate heading notional rent or notional expenses. They will come at appropriate places. Is that fine? Should I proceed? Any queries? Chalo. Now you have cost sheet in front of you now. Yes or no? अब एक बात बोलो. I am talking about whom? Manufacturer. Normally manufacturer buys what? Raw material. क्या वो कभी फिनिश गुड्स खरीद ही नहीं सकता, कोई भी कुछ भी हो? In rare events, he may have to buy finished goods also. He has got one big order which he is unable to make himself, so some he will buy from outside and then sell. इतना बड़ा कॉन्ट्रैक्ट जाने दो, उससे अच्छा जितना हो सके मैं बनाता हूं, बाकी का किसी दूसरे से खरीद के दे दूंगा ना. पॉसिबल है कि नहीं? इज नॉट ऑलवेज, इट्स अ रेयर इवेंट, but then there is a possibility, though a very feeble possibility, that the manufacturer may purchase finished goods. If that is the case, where will the cost of that finished goods appear in the cost sheet? Look at the cost sheet and tell me what is the most appropriate place of showing the cost of purchase of finished goods. Look at the cost sheet properly, think over. Where? Cost of production के पहले की बाद में. Perfect. You have not produced those goods, yes? So obviously it is not to be included in your cost of production. But you have sold those goods, so you should include it in the cost of goods sold. You can't include it before cost of production, but you have to include it before cost of goods sold. So in between these two, before or after adding opening stock of finished goods, along with opening stock of finished goods, we will show finished goods purchased. And if there is any carriage inward or freight inward in relation to that finished goods purchase, that also will be shown along with the purchase. Normally, carriage inward and all these things will be shown where? Raw material consumed mein. Yes or no? Look here, expenses relating to purchase hai na? But suppose that expense has been incurred on what? Has been incurred on what? Raw material purchased. I'm sorry, finished goods purchase. In that case, you will show it along with finished goods purchase after cost of production. Is that very much clear? Now tell me, what if some finished goods have been given away as donation or charity? Some finished goods have been given away as donations or charity. Should that be shown in the cost sheet? Yes or no? Donation and charity as an expense is a non-operating expense, so it should not be shown in the cost sheet. But what is the journal entry of donation if you give goods? Donation to goods. तो डोनेशन वाला इफेक्ट, डेबिट इफेक्ट ऑफ एक्सपेंस विल नॉट कम, लेकिन गुड्स गया है ना, गुड्स वाला इफेक्ट तो यहां दिखाना पड़ेगा. यू हैव प्रोड्यूस दोस गुड्स, यस और नो? तो उसका कॉस्ट आपके कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन में होगा कि नहीं होगा? लेकिन हैव यू सोल्ड देम? नो. तो इन कॉस्ट ऑफ गुड्स सोल्ड you should not include the cost of such goods. You have produced those goods which you have given away as donation. You have produced those goods, yes or no? So in your cost of production, उनका cost तो होगा ही साथ में, but you have not sold those goods. So before cost of goods sold, the cost of such goods should be removed, deducted. Is that okay? So after cost of production, before cost of goods sold, we will deduct the cost of such goods which have been given away as donations or charity. You are not giving the effect of donation. That is the debit effect, which is an expense effect. Donation is a non-operating thing, so you will not show. But you are showing the credit effect of it, the goods going out. Is that fine? Suppose some finished goods have been destroyed by fire or lost by theft. What is the normal journal entry? Loss by fire account debit to goods account. Yeah, loss by theft account debit to goods account. Now loss is a non-operating thing, not a normal day-to-day business loss. So loss का effect इधर नहीं दिखाना है. But two goods are going out. The goods effect has to be shown. And again at the same place, because those goods were manufactured by us, their cost is already included in production cost. But before cost of goods sold, you should deduct because these goods have not been sold. आपने अग्नि देवता को ये goods बेचे नहीं है. If the raw materials is lost by fire, have you consumed those raw materials in the production? Yes or no? No. So while calculating raw material consumed, you will have to deduct the raw materials destroyed by fire or lost by theft because you have not consumed it. And the second effect is the loss effect, which is a non-operating. Is that clear? Is that very much clear? Now what if The finished goods are distributed as free samples. What is your entry then? I'm sorry, what is your entry? Advertisement account debit to goods account. Advertisement effect will come in selling and distribution overheads, and goods are going out. Again here, before cost of goods sold, you will have to deduct the cost of those goods. Why? Because you have not sold the goods. So before cost of goods sold, you will have to deduct the cost of goods distributed as free samples. Are these things clear? Yes or no? Very, very clear. What else? So one thing was left out to be told about direct materials. Normally all those things which go into the product, all those materials which go into the product are direct material. But sometimes the value of materials is so insignificant as compared to the value of other materials that you don't show it as direct materials, you show it as indirect materials in factory overheads. I'll give you an example. First, understand the statement. Normally, all those raw materials which go into the product are part of the final product, and so you say that it is direct materials. However, sometimes, as compared to the value of other materials, one of the materials will have so insignificant value that you, instead of treating it as a direct material, will treat it as an indirect material used in the factory, and thus factory overheads. Like while making shirts, the cloth of the shirt, say suppose we are making designer blazers, designer blazers, as compared to the cost of the cloth, what will be the cost of thread used? Very, very insignificant. Yes or no? So then thread or needle or say buttons, these are all having very, very insignificant value. They together will not cost you more than 8-10 rupees as compared to the cost of the cloth, which would go to hundreds of rupees. So you will shift it to factory overheads. The same is the case with varnish. In case of furniture business, the main cost is the cost of wood, which is a huge cost. Against that, the cost of nails. अभी 2 रुपए में कितना nails आता है मालूम है? If you go to an hardware shop, 2 रुपए का किला दो तो वो ऐसे कुछ भी बांध के इतना मुट्ठी भर के दे देता है 2-4 रुपए में. So the cost of that, suppose you are making one big bench. This bench was made for 1800 rupees. The basic cost was the cost of the wood and the iron frame and the sanmaika that was put on it. But against that, the cost of Fevicol and the nails that were used at all the corners to stick that sanmaika was so insignificant. So you will treat it as factory overheads, indirect material. Are all these things clear? Really very clear? Now, before it becomes too heavy, let's start writing down before any further explanation goes ahead. So write down, unit costing deals with, write down, unit costing deals with manufacturers making homogeneous products from one single process. Three things to be underlined here: manufacturers, homogeneous products, single process. In order to find the cost of the product, under unit costing, a cost sheet is prepared. It is a sheet of paper where all the costs are listed and totaled in a systematic manner. Cost refers to values sacrificed, consumed, or exhausted in producing a thing or doing an activity. It is the amount of expenditure, it is the amount of expenditure incurred on a specified thing or activity, or which is attributable to a specified thing or activity. Now copy down this chart. over. Fine then. Then write this direct materials consumed. You're not making the cost sheet later. Direct materials consumed over. Is this copied? Then have the cost sheet, please. Quick. Below write down classification of cost. Direct cost and B indirect cost. A direct cost in case of direct cost write down it is the cost which is directly chargeable to the product manufactured. Direct cost consists of direct materials, direct wages and other direct expenses. Direct materials is the cost of materials used in the manufacturing of product and which becomes part of the product. Materials of insignificant value are considered as indirect materials and shown as factory overheads. Direct wages refers to wages paid to workers involved in the production process of converting raw materials into finished goods. Other direct expenses include cost of designs, dyes, etc. B. Indirect cost. costs which are not direct cost are indirect cost. They are also known as overheads or on cost. Such cost cannot be directly associated with the product. Such costs are further classified into factory overheads, office and administration overheads, and selling and distribution overheads. Points to remember: 1. Following expenses are not included in cost sheet. A. Goodwill written off. Preliminary expenses written off. Discount on issue of shares written off. Loss on sale of assets. Capital expenditure. Donations. Penalties and fines. Provision for tax. Financial expenses such as interest, RDD, but then write a note: bad debt is taken as a selling and distribution overheads. Now something important, please listen here, about tax. Now income tax is not taken. Provision for tax is actually provision for tax for profit. It's a tax on profit, means income tax. Income tax. This is never taken. However, there are many other taxes also, like sales tax. Sales tax is related to selling activity, so it will come as selling and distribution overheads. Then you have excise duty. It's a tax on production, so it comes under factory overheads. Then you have octroi duty, import duty, customs duty. These are direct materials consumed, expenses relating to purchase. Yes. So these expenses, these taxes will come. Only income tax or tax on profit will not come. And lastly, about the bad debts. Now there is a lot of dispute about bad debts. There are some authors who believe that bad debts should not be taken in the cost sheet. And there are many authors who say bad debts is a part of the cost. It's a normal day-to-day business loss, so it should be taken as a cost. Though RDD is not your actual loss. It's just that you are considering that some part of your debt will not be recoverable. Is that the reason why you are creating some reserve? तो RDD तो नहीं लेना है. जब बेड डेट सच में होगा तब उसको कॉस्ट मानने का कि नहीं मानने का उसकी बात है. अभी तक तो लॉस हुआ ही नहीं है, हम ऐसे रिजर्व क्रिएट कर रहे हैं, तो उसको कॉस्ट कैसे मान सकते हैं? So RDD is a unanimous decision not to be taken. About RDD there is a lot of dispute, because there are two beliefs whether to be taken or not to be taken bad debts. I have taken the view that it has to be taken under selling and distribution, because it is the duty of the selling and distribution department that before selling they should ensure the credit worthiness of the party. Before giving any party on credit, they should find out the credit worthiness of the party. So if at all they have not done their job properly and bad debt arises, they are supposed to be blamed, the selling department. So it's a view the bad debts has to be taken. But always in case of bad debts, it's always safer to write a note that alternatively bad debts can be treated as a non-operating expense and not taken in the cost sheet. Is that fine? So points to remember: 1 over second. Sometimes expenses are taken in the cost sheet on notional basis even though they are not incurred. Now effects of special transactions. A. Finished goods purchased. Effect add to cost of, we have already discussed this, add to cost of production. B. Carriage inward on finished goods purchased. Effect add to cost of production along with finished goods purchased. C. Raw materials destroyed or lost. Effect the cost of such material is deducted while calculating materials consumed. D. Finished goods destroyed or lost. Effect deduct from cost of production. E. Finished goods given as charity or donation. Effect deduct from cost of production. F. Finished goods distributed as free samples. Effects add to selling and distribution overheads. Add to selling and distribution overheads and deduct from cost of production. Still long way to go before we start our problems. यहाँ तक कोई डाउट?